Just before we jump in, you need to be warned what follows is intense, and not for the faint of heart. This story exists solely to educate and entertain. What you're about to hear are the exact courtroom statements from the federal case against Sean Diddy Combs, covered by Inner City Press. No one expected him to actually walk in the courtroom. Already had names like Cassie Will Smith, Monique, and more on the record. But when Ice Cube entered that building, everything flipped upside down. The man who built his name on never backing away now stood tall against the very forces he once tried to dodge, and today he wasn't dodging anything. Cube didn't show up for applause. He didn't want headlines. He came to speak, and what he brought, along with him, files, audio-proof full identities, and ties that froze everyone inside that room. This hearing was no longer about just one man. It became about the whole empire. A hidden network built on silence, power, and control held up by faces. The world idolizes the tales involving Jamie Foxx, Oprah, Winfrey, Quincy Jones, and others now had a first-hand source. And that source was Cube. It was supposed to be an average procedural day news cruise buzzing outside journalists buried in documents. Diddy's lawyers straightening their suits, faking calm. While the whole house was falling quietly around them, then came that door opening and Cube walking through. No team behind him, no cameras waiting. Just Cube clutching a folder. Eyes locked, forward stepping like a man who'd been counting the days until this exact moment the murmurs began. Instantly, jurors adjusted in their chairs. Even the judge leaned back, unsure of what he was witnessing. Diddy didn't even react at first. But when he looked up, the color disappeared from his face. "I wasn't invited. Cube said I asked to be here." The judge gave a nod, and something in Cube's tone stopped time. It wasn't polished. It wasn't scripted. It was real. It was raw. Like it had been buried deep inside the culture for 30 years, and the first words out his mouth some of you didn't catch on. "I'm not one of them." And that made them mad. Dead silence hit the room. Cube wasn't rhyming. He wasn't acting. He was standing, as a man who knew the game, watched others lose to it, and finally came to burn the curtain down. He started with the circle, the one everyone whispers about. But nobody names the elites. The power holders, the ones smiling for the public while pulling every string in the background. They don't let you in. Out of love, Cube said, they bring you close to keep you in chains, and when you refuse, that's when it begins. He turned his gaze to Diddy, who was clearly rattled. That's when they start the rumors, the sudden cancellations, the character assassinations, the fake headlines, the phone calls you'll never trace. The crowd was locked in. Cube said he'd watched it play out time after time. Real people, true artists, pulled in, given a glimpse of the throne, and then asked to kneel. They demand the signature, they hand you the script, and if you won't play your role, they make sure your career ends on the spot. And Cube didn't dance around it. Diddy wasn't just a member. He was the architect. He held for a second. The judge asked if he needed to pause. Cube shook his head, then looked the jurors dead in the eye. "You want to know why I'm speaking today?" he said. "Because they came for someone I admire. Jamie Foxx." The pens stopped scribbling. The eyes turned forward. Cube said, "It always starts the same: fake friendships, open arms, endless invites, and ringing phones. From people you never thought even knew your name." Jamie was blazing through the industry, unstoppable presence, energy like lightning. And that's when they made their move first. "It starts with praise," Cube said, "then come the requests, then comes the leash." He told the courtroom that Jamie Foxx had opened up to him on more than one occasion, always in whispers, always looking over his shoulder. "They act like family at first, and as long as you go with it, they label you a genius. But if you don't," he let the quiet speak. Cube laid it all out. The secret basketball gatherings, the ban on cameras, the endless black trucks, and the unknown faces showing up. It wasn't just pickup games. He said it was a setup. They wanted to know who you'd follow, who you'd question, who you'd cover for. He said Jamie stayed friendly, kept it light, never rocked the boat, but never fully surrendered either. And that's when the smear machine started. Suddenly he's called hard to work with. Suddenly his health is under a microscope. Suddenly he vanishes from real news and pops up in tabloid rumors. Cube told the room that Jaime's medical scare in 2023 wasn't some random incident, that was a message, that was the penalty disguised as an illness. He said Diddy's people didn't throw parties. They built blackmail centers, cameras rolling footage, stored moments captured without consent. And once they had it, they never let it go. and they knew exactly when to use it. Cube said, Jaime once phoned him after one of those events. He didn't say much, but his voice said everything he told me, Cube. I can't explain it. But I'll never forget it if the room hadn't been shocked yet. They were now because the next name Cube mentioned was Oprah. It's bigger than Puff. He said there are layers to this game. He told the court that right when Jaime's star was peaking right after Ray and before the awards talk, Jaime got a low-key call from Oprah herself. She didn't say congratulations, Cube said. She told him he was slipping. Cube didn't blink while telling it. Jaime thought she was reaching out in support, but she came to steer him back. She told him he was losing focus and said she'd introduce him to someone who could realign everything, and that someone was Quincy Jones. Cube didn't need to explain who Quincy was. The room already knew. He said Quincy is one of those names that lives in the shadows, praised in public, feared in private. She brought Jaime to Quincy's place like it was some kind of wake-up call, Cube said. But it wasn't healing. It was submission. Jaime later told Cube. It was the weirdest experience of his life. He said it didn't feel like help. It felt like training, Cube made. It clear that Jaime never gave the full story of what happened that night, but the look in his eyes when he tried to explain said it all. Cube leaned closer. Oprah called it guidance. Quincy called it legacy. But what they really handed him was a collar, Cube said. After that night, Jaime started shifting. Not because he chose to, but because he had no other choice. He told me, Cube, if you want to stay breathing in this world, you've got to fake it. And I watched him fake it, year after year. Cube stopped, but the pretending days are done. Cube didn't hesitate when he brought up Quincy again. He said calmly, this man isn't just a hitmaker in this town. He's the kingmaker. The courtroom didn't move, not a single sound. Cube looked at the judge with full respect. This ain't rumors, this is the truth, and it belongs in the record. He told the jurors for decades, Quincy's name was spoken in quiet tones, praised in public, tiptoed around in private, and what gave him that power? Well, that part never makes it into interviews or lyrics unless you know how to listen. Cube leaned in deeper. You don't rise like Quincy, unless you don't rise without offering something. And I'm not talking checks and contracts, I'm talking deep sacrifices, the kind that don't come with paper trails, only silent chains. He told the court that what went down between Jamie Foxx and Quincy wasn't by chance, that link-up set by Oprah wasn't friendly. It was a transfer, Cube said. Jamie wasn't guided, he was handed off from one controller to the next. And you could hear a pin drop, Cube told me later. That wasn't wisdom being shared. It was orders disguised as help. Cube told the jury it felt more like processing, not mentoring. Not support, just cold redirection. Cube said he's heard echoes of that story from others too. Artists who vanished without warning, rebranded overnight, broke down in silence, and were never seen the same again. He said, Quincy's tactic was charm, but his message matched Diddy's follow the rules or be erased. And then he said something darker. Cube talked about photos, private ones passed in secret for years. Images nobody was meant to see. And somehow Quincy always appeared in the background, always smiling, but the people in front of him never were. Cube told the court he couldn't verify every single frame, but what he could say without doubt was this. Quincy wasn't just coaching people, he was delivering them, and the ones pulling. The strings above him still remain nameless. Cube stood straight and said, let's talk about how they make sure you stay quiet, because this ain't just fear. It's leverage. He explained to the jury that Diddy's control didn't just come from his fame. It came from what he saved, the clips, the footage, the dirt, all of it collected for years, pulled from wild parties, studio sessions, jets, and hotel suites. Everything archived, everything labeled, everything kept. They don't just throw events, they set traps. Cube turned to the legal team and said, you want to know why so many stayed silent? Start asking how many got a USB drive with no name on it. Ask how many picked up the phone and heard themselves doing something they didn't remember. Ask how many stars vanished after refusing to play ball. He said Jaime wasn't the only one. He personally knew at least two other actors who had been cornered at one of Diddy's secret gatherings, one of them called Cube. Straight up panicked, said he blacked out around midnight. Woke up somewhere unfamiliar, contract on the desk phone full of images that weren't his. Cube broke it down. Once they've got you, there's no walking away, you belong to them. That's why so many smile through it, why they laugh for the cameras, pose on red carpets like life's good, because if they don't, the vault gets opened. He told the jury. Diddy doesn't make the threats himself. He's got an army for that. Publicists, magazine editors, producers, designers, it won't come from him, but it'll come from everywhere at once. And when someone tries to break away, suddenly the headlines flip. On you old stories resurface, old whispers get louder. Suddenly you're called unstable, a liability too hard to handle. Cube said that exact script hit Jaime right after he stepped back. Suddenly it's all health rumors, whispers about breakdowns, questions about his sanity. No. He was breaking chains, and they hate. When you do that, Cube's tone dropped. He leaned in just a bit, eyes on the jury, and the whole room went still, like the air itself was holding its breath. I went to one of them. He said only once back in the early 2000s, a quiet invite. No event flyer, no public list. Just a name, a time, and a black car waiting out front. They called it a mixer, that's the word they use. Cube said he pulled up to this massive estate. In Beverly Hills, gates shut behind him, phones collected at the entrance, and once inside, it wasn't no mixer. It was something else. Low lights, no music, just energy, thick and strange people murmuring, guards posted at every turn, and the scariest part, doors everywhere, some cracked, some closed, some with noise behind them. Cube said he saw names, he recognized top-tier stars. Some looked out of it, some looked scared. And then he saw a moment that stayed burned in his mind. A man. He looked up to one of the biggest ever, slumped on a couch, eyes wide frozen, and a camera set up right in his face. Cube said he turned around, walked straight out. No goodbyes, no explanations, got back in the car and left the next morning. His phone rang. No name, no number, just one line, "We saw you leave." He said nothing happened after that, but he never stepped foot near those people again because he knew right then that wasn't some Hollywood night out, that was bait. Cube looked directly at Diddy and said, "You didn't just wreck people, you caught them on film." First, the judge had to halt everything. Court staff were visibly shaken. Diddy's attorney leaned in, whispering hard. But Diddy didn't react. He just sat locked in like he knew this. Time, the lenses weren't his anymore. By the time Cube got this far, it wasn't even a trial anymore. It was a reckoning. It felt like truth coming out in waves. Diddy's legal team had stopped pushing back. The flood was already too strong, and Cube still wasn't done. They didn't just try to quiet Jamie Foxx. He said they tried to wipe him clean. Cube told the jury that silence in Hollywood isn't something they ask for. It's something they force with strategy, with systems, with silent hits that make it seem like someone just faded out. But what's really happening behind the scenes, it's calculated. After Jaime backed away from those events, strange things started unfolding. Cube said gigs locked in, suddenly gone, whispers spreading. Fast one day he's iconic. Next day he's difficult, unstable. A risk. Cube paused, let that settle. They love that word, unstable. It's their favorite way of saying he didn't follow orders. He pulled out a chart, a breakdown of Jaime's meetings and jobs between 2019 and 2021. The jury looked unsure until Cube marked a pattern, cancellation after cancellation, all tied to producers who had ties back to Bad Boy Revolt. Or other firms. Diddy had fingerprints on random. No way. He explained how Jaime's Netflix deals hit roadblocks, how projects he was lined up to produce vanished, how longtime partners stopped replying. Then came the medical emergency. Cube lowered his voice, stared down a second, then went on. You really believe that just happened? That a guy like Jamie in top shape just goes down on set, right? When he starts telling his truth, Cube didn't point fingers, but his tone did. I don't know everything about that hospital stay, he said, but I know fear when I see it, and I know revenge. And that wasn't just a health thing, that was a warning. Cube said Jaime paid the price. Not just for speaking out, but for refusing the role they scripted for him. They dangled opportunities, they promised image, cleanups. They just wanted him to shake hands, smile and pretend. But Jaime wouldn't budge. That's when the swap rumors began. That's when folks questioned if he was even the same man anymore. That's the playbook. They tear you apart piece by piece until even the fans start doubting. Cube leaned closer, voice low again. That's how they lock it down. Not just fear, but erasure. Let me explain something, Cube said as everyone leaned closer. This ain't about shows. This ain't even about wild parties. This is about rewriting reality. He scanned the courtroom, held the prosecution's gaze. They don't just shape what you hear. They shape what you think, what scares you, what defines you. Cube laid it bare. Hollywood, the kind run by that. Inner ring isn't art, it's an engine. It builds narratives. It uses trauma, identity, and rebellion, like costumes, then sells it right back to the people. It's not expression, it's agenda. He waited, then dropped the line that cracked the silence. The folks backing gangster rap are the same ones bankrolling the jails. Cube said. That was what Tupac tried to shout before they cut him off, before he turned revolutionary, before he pointed too close to the ones really pulling strings, Cube told. Them Diddy wasn't just playing a part, he was the delivery man. The face picked out to glam up the same path that ends in broken artists and empty souls, and anyone who resisted was cut from the picture. No airtime, no ads, no support rap about ownership. And they bury your album rap about healing, and they call you soft. Cube said artists who spoke truth, spiritual stuff, anti-industry stuff, got hit with shutdowns, studio raids, lost drives, locked accounts. The goal wasn't just to entertain, it was to condition. He circled back to those nights. Those parties said they weren't just exclusive gatherings. They weren't parties. They were proving grounds, rooms where artists got tested. Cameras rolling, trust measured by obedience. Cube said if you went along, you were protected. If you didn't, you got edited, erased, rewritten. He brought up a singer, big name, once invited to a Diddy event. She didn't sign. She didn't play the game within months. She's unstable, dropped, forgotten. No red carpets, no features, not coincidence, punishment. Cube turned back to the jury and dropped the line that changed the whole room. Y'all keep asking what Diddy did. But the real question is, how many people helped him do it? And right there it shifted. This wasn't just a trial. This was a mirror. The judge asked if he had any last words. Cube said yes, stepped down, walked slow to the center of the room, and looked Diddy straight in the face. You didn't build an empire, you built a prison out of people's silence. You called it success, but it was slavery. Diddy didn't blink, didn't speak. Cube kept going. You didn't just throw parties, you built traps. Dressed them up as celebrations, filled them with cameras and contracts and fear. You made people think they were chosen when really they were chained. He turned to the courtroom, to every artist, every young dreamer watching this right now. Ask yourself, who owns the door to your dream? Who controls the key? And what do they ask from you before you get to walk through it? He took a deep breath. I stayed silent because I thought silence would save me, but it doesn't. Silence turns you into a helper. It makes you part of the machine. He opened a folder, pulled out an old photo. This was me in 91, eyes full of hope. Thought I could change the game. Thought I could keep my soul. He held it up, paused, then ripped it in half. That version didn't survive. But this one, the one standing here today, this one's not scared of any of you anymore. Cube walked back to the stand, dropped the folder, looked the judge dead in the eye. I don't know what y'all gonna do with this, but now you know, you all know. He looked at Diddy one last time and said, you thought we'd never speak. You thought the silence would hold. But now the door's wide open. Cube stepped down, past the gallery, didn't stop for the reporters, didn't wait for a reaction, just walked. And right before he left, he turned his head and said, they didn't kill Jaime. They didn't kill me. They just made us louder, and then he was gone. But what he left behind shook the whole building, and nothing in Hollywood would ever be quiet again.